Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Home Staging Talk Show Live. I'm Jenny Norris, your host, and this show is brought to you by the International Association of Home Staging Professionals. And today we've got an exciting show. We are going to do the big reveal of our 2022 home staging industry statistics, and I've got special guest Kevin Htain who will be joining us shortly. If you are watching us live, go ahead and comment. We are streaming to several different locations, so sign your message or your comment so that we know who you are, because it doesn't show us because we're streaming to multiple sites. And so before we get to our statistics, I did want to just update, give some information here on upcoming events. So of course we have our upcoming conference in Portugal, the IHOSP Europe conference in Portugal, wonderful speakers coming from all over, and you'll recognize many of their names. If you go to their website, you can see who's speaking. So it's a one-day conference on May 28th, and then the 29th is a half-day add-on for those people who would like to earn their SSS, their Senior Staging Specialist designation. And what a beautiful location. So we just booked our travel, and it's a beautiful time of year there. And so hopefully those of you who are coming over, if you'd like to take some extra days and, tour around with other people who are coming from out of the area, let me know. Just send me an email, because we have about a 5-day add-on tour that we're doing. But it's gonna be really, really fun and educational, and the topics are really great. So go take a look, ihospeurope.com. The headquarter hotel is the Pestana Palace Hotel. This is their foyer, and so it's an old, historic, beautiful hotel in Lisbon. Gorgeous setting, and so they have special rates they've negotiated. So make sure that if you do plan on attending, that you do use the portal through the IHOSP Europe conference in order to book your hotel. So very excited for that. And they also have a black tie home staging awards gala ceremony on Saturday night. So that'll be a lot of fun, and the Europeans really love to celebrate and party, and so that'll be a great way to wrap up the one-day conference for those who are coming. If you want more information, just go to ihospeurope.com, so IAHSPeurope.com. And then, of course, our conference, which is tickets are on sale now. This is the theme, The Greatest Show, February 24th, 25th, and 26th in New Orleans. So we are very excited to have that. That'll be next year, 2023. And so tickets are selling right now. You get the early bird pricing, the best pricing available. Those of you that want to plan for attendance and save money, use the Clusivy program, because that will help you set aside money to be able to use for attending conference. And that's the picture of the hotel, the Sheraton, where we plan on holding the event. It's right in the French Quarter, great part of New Orleans. So we are looking forward to that. And again, early bird tickets on sale right now, and prices will be going up in the next month or so. So don't miss out on getting your best pricing. And of course, we have our gala awards dinner. Our conference is two full days of education, plus we have our gala awards dinner, and then we also have a half-day vendor expo that kicks off the entire event, and that's really a lot of fun. But this will be Sunday night, February 26th. And costumes are not mandatory, but they are encouraged. But it's the Masquerade, Mardi Gras Gala and Awards Dinner. So that'll be a great way to wrap up our event. And then, of course, following the event on Monday, Tuesday, there will be an advanced stager training session for attendees that are six figures and above in their business. And so plan on attending that. It's really great in-depth teaching and information specific to people who are growing to that next level and really need that to ask a lot of questions that may not get addressed in the general sessions for the conference. So we add on the advanced stager training. If you plan on coming to the advanced stager training, there is a bundled ticket. So you'll be able to save some money when you buy your general session ticket plus the advanced stager training. I believe you are able to save about $100 off of that. So make sure to look into that for the advanced stager training. Space will be limited in the AST because it is we're not teaching obviously in the big ballroom. And so we want to make sure that we have plenty of space for all of the attendees. And so space will be limited to first come, first serve. And at that session, of course, we'll go over the scale program as well as other in-depth information and really teach people how to grow their business to the point where you're not working on your business every day or in it, you're working on it or pursuing other projects. And that's ultimately the goal. All righty. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and bring Kevin in because I know we all want to get to the statistics, all the exciting updated info. Hey, honey. All right, here's Kevin. Should give you a countdown. Good morning. Oh, hang on a second. I muted you. Hang on a second. Unmute. Okay, there you go. Hey, Kev.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. And then is that Sebastian?
That's Sebastian.
A little troublemaker. Hi, Sebastian. Oh, he's giving us the side eye. He's so cute. So for people who don't know who you are, go ahead and introduce yourself to people where you're coming to us live from.
My name is Kevin Htain. I am the principal owner, CEO of Identity Home Staging and Design from Long Beach, California, in Southern California. We have been the featured stagers for HGTV's Flip or Flop for the past 11 years.
Gosh, has it been that long? I can't believe it. Wow.
It's been more than a decade of staging for them, so it's been kind of crazy.
I just can't believe it's been. I mean, it just seems like yesterday. You know what I mean? It's just time just goes like that. It's crazy.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I was just saying that my whole 30s were like obliterated. I don't even know. Next thing you know, I'm in my mid 40s. I'm like, what? How did that happen?
We all feel that way. Time marches on, and that's like I always say, it's a great equalizer. You can't. I wish you could like save it up and store it, but you can't. Yeah, that's crazy. So 11 years. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you do he does fabulous work, and I know a lot of people in the industry know who you are, but there's a lot of new people who maybe have not had the privilege of meeting you. And so when I wanted to do the statistics, I thought, I want to have like a sidekick or another colleague on here to kind of go over the numbers. And you were my first thought came to my head. I thought, I'm going to ask Kevin because you always have,
Let's break this down. Yeah.
And you always have good insights and so forth. And so I sent Kevin the report a couple of days ago, and it's 42 pages.
Yeah.
So he had time to kind of absorb some of the content. And so what I wanted to do is I actually have it up as like a slide gallery here as a PDF. So we're just going to start going through and talking about the different information. So I'm going to put it up right here so you and I can see it. And so there's the cover. So the 2022 home staging industry stats. And I want to first say thank you to all those who did turn in their numbers to help us create this summary. And so we're going to break it down because there's a lot of different sections to it and different ways stagers can use it. So when you first got the report, what was your overall impression?
Well, first of all, it was very detailed. I mean, like I was very surprised to see how many people responded, the amount of properties that were surveyed. It's very comprehensive, but not only that, but it's global, which is very different. Usually we're talking within like the continental United States, maybe Hawaii, Alaska included as well too. But this is a global survey, and this is something that is a little bit more powerful because it's really taking the whole picture in at this one point right now. So I think we're the first ones that has a global survey. I'm talking beyond just like going to Canada or maybe Mexico or something else. We're going to Europe, we're going to Asia, we're looking at other places as well too. Russia. So people are using the staging and they are utilizing it for the best interest. And we are getting a global perspective right now of what staging can do in the market. So that is really interesting to see that out of all the responses that came in through from where they came from, of course, we got a whole bunch of them from the United States, but got some global perspective as well too.
Yeah, so the predominantly, North America, US, Canada, and then HSA, UK, and then of course iHouse Europe generate their statistics as well, specific for their regions. But I didn't eliminate people who came in from other countries, and so because they're part of the industry, and so anyway, so it's exciting to see the overall impact. So we'll go ahead and get started. So this is the cover, and then there will be a message from myself in there that people can read. And then the table of contents, you can see by detail, pages are numbered. And so you'll be able to kind of flip through if you're looking for a particular, specific information, you can find it easily. And then here's just kind of the overview. So 2003 was the first year that iHost actually started tracking statistics. I remember because I actually had done them for my own business and sent in some, bar graphs or something to Barb Schwartz at the time. And she said, "Oh, honey, can you track these for the entire industry?" And so I started putting out emails to people saying, "Send in your statistics." So that was the genesis of the very first year that we generated statistics was 2003. And it wasn't just like all the good properties. It was like whatever it's taking. So you have basically, and we address this in the survey, two scenarios where a house is prepped for market, it gets staged, it goes on the market, it sells. That's one scenario. And the other scenario is it doesn't get staged first, goes on the market, languishes, finally gets staged, and then it sells. So we were tracking both of those, and we've been doing that from the very beginning. And so as we've advanced, there was a portal for people to put in their stats. And so just the important, let's talk just a little bit, Kevin, about the importance of statistics. Why do they matter in the industry?
Well, of course they matter because you want to know it's a measure. It's a measuring tool. So to find out where you stand as far as if you are servicing correctly or not, that's one thing to find out. Also, your demographics in your area as well too. And it makes a difference in the final sale. Everything matters basically on the result. So that's why we need to have the statistic to show that staging actually does work in all markets. Right now it's just a hot time, and right now we're getting more people saying, "Well, we just don't need to stage a property; it's going to sell anyways." Well, that's going to change eventually, and then there's going to be people like, "We need to stage a property because we need to help it to get it sell." But right now, we are just at the point where we're staving off the offers from coming in because the offers come in just as soon as the for sale sign goes into the mark onto the lawn. People are already calling about it, coming
Right.
else. So we have to really work with our clients to tell them, now hold on, wait just a little bit for the staging, and then throw that offer in with the rest of the offers are going to come in, create that bidding war, But before back 2008, 2011, between that time, we were staging to make sure properties were going to sell faster in competition to the rest because they were in better condition than the other ones that were not. So
Yeah. And I think, data matters to justify and validate our industry, that the value that we bring to the table. Even in a hot market, there's money being left behind when realtors or sellers don't stage prior to listing. Yeah, they may get an offer. They might get even more than one offer. However, they would have gotten better offers had it been staged. And so they're leaving money on the table. And so we do address that here in the survey. And it's important that, so this is I do want to preface this by saying this is a general survey of overall areas. And so not all areas are experiencing the same days on market and sale process and so forth. So it's really important that not only do you use these numbers, but you always want to be tracking your own numbers for your own business, because your market might be different than the general numbers. And so I think that's very important.
I am proud to say mine are a little bit accelerated than
Yes, I know.
so I do on my own statistics, and I do offer that, and I do relay them in comparison to the national average. I'm like, see, we're doing a lot better than this. So we are right now, it's just a great time to stage for the ones that want to do it.
Yeah.
The it's interesting because at this point we have to, like, people keep asking, why are you raising your prices? And I'm like, well, we have to because the residual income from what I call BICs, or beyond initial contract projects, where you're, renting out your inventory for additional months, that dried up 2 years ago. None of us see that anymore. And that was a viable stream of income. It definitely
Right.
was. So unless you have a model contract or something else which is continuing in a month to month, then you're kind of, on the opposite spectrum there.
Yeah, because the residuals, we do have a couple higher end properties here tend to take longer to sell. So I have one that we staged in like August, September that is still, it's a penthouse, unique property, over 2 million. So those tend to sit longer. But the, other properties that you're right, we're not keeping our things in place. So that residual income isn't there. The benefit of that is that we can move our things from property to property. We're not having to go out and purchase more things to support the demand. But I do think pricing has to go up. Gas prices, the insanity of
Oh,
the fuel prices.
gosh.
Yeah. And it's also, I look at it like, so let's take a look at this survey here, or this page here. It says there's about 10,000 stagers worldwide.
Okay.
That equates to approximately 1% of realtors and about half a percent of licensed real estate agents in the U.S. alone. So there's, like a little over 1 million realtors. So realtors, of course, those of you that are watching have to join National Association of Realtors at the national, state, and local level. So somebody that passes a test to sell real estate as a real estate agent, there's about double the number of those than there are realtors. So in 2021, an estimated 6.12 million properties were bought and sold in the U.S. and 668,000 in Canada. I thought that was interesting. It's 10 to 1 practically, U.S. versus Canada. So, and then we have some other numbers as far as, things that are selling in other countries. So 1.3 million of the properties were involved using a stager, whether that was a vacant property, a hands-on, a consultation, something that involved a stager. 1.3 million out of the 6.12. So that's where I got the 22% of the properties bought and sold in the U.S. involved a stager. So that means we interacted with 22% of the listing agents, impacted 22% of the buyers agents, 22% of the sellers and buyers. So if you add all that up, 1.3 times all those numbers, it's almost, it's a lot of people that we impact with our staging. And even though there's a lot more opportunities out there for people, the chasing leads and so forth, the fact that only 6.12 million properties sold, and that number is from a statistical resource you can see at the bottom there, that's 22% impact. And sometimes I feel like the staging industry gets marginalized by these larger entities because we're such a little microcosm. I mean, the number of stagers is very small compared to the number of real estate agents, and yet the impact to the number of properties that are actually bought and sold is far greater. And so I really encourage everybody to really hone in on this page to understand the point that's being made is that we deserve to have the recognition for the impact we make in the market. If we're a fraction of the size, like let's say in the U.S. alone, maybe 5,000, 6,000 stagers. I'm just throwing a number out. And if we have 1.2 million realtors, we're a tiny fraction, and yet we impact 22% of the sales. So. Wow. Yeah, and that's huge. And so we shouldn't be kind of marginalized off to the side or sort of like, oh, that doesn't work. We're making a big impact in helping sellers net the very most, which in turn, realtors make more commission. So everybody's making more money. And, if you say anybody that sort of is getting not the short end of the stick, the buyers, well, yes, they're having to pay more for properties. However, the properties that are staged, they actually feel good about purchasing. They're not walking into some house that nobody prepared and didn't care because they knew it was going to sell anyway. And it's sort of like an FU to the buyer. Like, we didn't even make our beds. We don't care because we know that you're desperate, versus them walking into a property that's staged and them feeling like this actually feels like a really well-maintained home. And I really feel good standing in the space. And I really like what I see. It's a different experience for buyers. And so we don't want to, diminish that impact, even though for buyers, it is a tough time for them trying to find properties. So anything else you want to add on that?
No, I agree with you on that too. That I think the statistics should be a little bit higher for people that are working with properties. I believe that I think that numbers. I suspect the number's a little bit higher than 22% of properties that are being touched by a stage or such capacity. Because I think a lot more people are savvy to it at one point. They're either doing it on their own and they're not involving a stager, but somehow the home prep is definitely a lot higher than what we think.
Yeah, and I think like in my market, we're probably at 25%, even 1 out of 4. And so your number. If you're watching, you're like, well, how do I know what my number is in my region? Look at 10 properties that are comparable out of 10, how many can you find that are professionally staged? That's the operative word, professionally staged. If it's 3 out of 10, that's 30%. If it's 2 out of 10, that's 20%. So that statistic is going to vary depending on where you live. And so then this map just shows where stagers are located around the world, our members and so forth. And, we truly are a global entity, global, association, and staging is definitely on the grow in a lot of these countries overseas too, which is really exciting. All right. Here's the global overview. So you guys can look at this, but I thought this was interesting. I pulled these numbers from the top percent of ownership around the world, countries that are top owners as far as the population, how much of the population actually owns a home. Romania topped the list, which I thought was really interesting. And I can't really see. So it's 96.4 of Romanians own property, Singapore 90.8, and then it goes down. Poland is number 10 at 83.5%. And the US are 65% of the people own homes, and the average price for a home in the US is $408,000 is the median. And then you can see on the right-hand side the price of properties, price per square foot, or pounds per square foot, or euros per square foot, however they reflect it. And so I thought that was really interesting as well. So there's some places where real estate is more expensive than the US, and then places where, of course, it's less expensive. So overall, there's a global shortage of housing, and the U.S. has felt the pinch more than other countries with investors. I thought this statistic was alarming, gobbling up an astounding 15% of our available homes.
Yeah.
Yeah, in 2021 alone.
Yeah, that's what I thought was interesting too. I thought that was kind of weird. That that's a lot.
It's a lot. I mean, and I've talked about this the last, I think, a show or two ago.
I thought it was going to be somewhere maybe like 7 to 8.
Yeah,
that's almost double. That's almost double what I thought it was going to be. That was weird.
Yeah, and to me it is alarming because that 15% of the available properties, they're renting them out. They're not turning around and reselling them. So that makes 15% of the available houses for sale are unavailable to buyers. And that's why we have this not only do we have a shortage of housing, but we also have a shortage of housing available because these investors are coming into, like, there's a big subdivision, Lennar is the builder. They came and bought 3,000 of the homes before they even had broken ground and said, we're going to buy 3,000 of these. And these builders are saying, okay, and selling them off to these investors. And that makes the available housing for, people here in our area unavailable for them to actually purchase. And so, I don't think this is new as far as investors buying, but I think that there was definitely a surge. And I feel like there needs to be some intervention from our leaders in order to prevent this from continuing to happen where, there was somebody that was saying in the future, and I don't know how far of a distant future it is, that none of us will own homes and we'll all be renting and we're going to like it. And I thought, heck no, that's not the life I want, because your home is an asset that actually appreciates. But there's a definite divide between the everyday person who can purchase a home and these billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar conglomerates that can come in.
That makes no sense, though, because I read an article somewhere that, well, not somewhere, I shouldn't say somewhere, actually from the Wall Street Journal, and said that more people made more money off of their home in equity than they did off of making the earnings from working a physical job.
Right. Yeah. And so
that happened in 1 year, and that's happened in the past 2 years, where people have made more money based off the property they own than they do making in their physical occupation or career. And
I totally agree. The equity people are gaining because of the crazy market is significant, and yet there's a lot of people who are trying to get in the game and they can't because of the rising prices, the interest rates are going up, and then the lack of
me. I can't get in the game.
I know.
It's too hard to get in.
And so it's very frustrating.
I'm saving my pennies. I'm waiting for this busted bubble to burst.
That's right.
I'm in.
We'll eventually go there, hopefully sooner than later. Okay, so here's the impacts. This kind of again talks about the impact of staging versus other parts of the thing. So the number of realtors, the number of real estate agents, the number of properties sold, number of sellers impacted, the number of buyers impacted. So you can see that the 6.1 million is the number of properties sold, and then the impact to the buyers and sellers of 1.2 million is the same. Our slice of pie is so small it doesn't even show up as a piece of wedge because it's so tiny at the versus the number of the impact as far as the number of stagers. So again, we are a fraction, we're like a microcosm of the real estate industry, yet we make this big impact and deserve to be recognized. So that's important. Okay, then we threw in some industry terminology. I think it's important that people, users of our services, understand what we do. And by the way, all these pages are downloaded on the homestagingstats.com. You could go there right now. You could download the report. You can actually download the JPEG pages. You can send these out to your sphere. You use these in whatever way you feel is necessary, but I feel like people need to understand our terminology. And so we, what is a staging consultation versus hands-on versus mixed media? What's a vacant property? What's it called when a stager removes items? And what are the typical staging rental loan use supply terms? And so that's important to be able to share with any clients. And in our survey, it was a 30-day term for inventory, rental, loan, use, supply, whatever term you use for your business. And then this I put together, this is top 10 factors that impact a staging business, because there's a Facebook post rolling around about the impact of realtors and how they don't keep all their money. And, before people ask for a discount, consider all these things. Well, stagers have a lot of expenses and things too that people don't understand. And it's up to us to educate our clients. So equipment, continued purchasing, warehouse storage, logistics to, own and operate trucks or hire labor or to rent trucks, team members, whether you have a one or a group of team members, those cost money, vehicles that you use, whether it's your own or you're renting, your insurance, your marketing expenses, education, and then other factors. And so when people say, why have your prices gone up? Well, because the cost of doing business continues to rise, whether it's the spaces that we, warehouse our items in, whether it's running those trucks and the gas, prices have to increase to accommodate, because my feeling is that everybody's making more on the sale of these houses. The seller's netting more, the realtors are making more commission. And it seems that stagers get asked to reduce our pricing. People will say, my budget's only $1,200, but yet it's a $2,000 request. Staging, they want me to do it for $800 less. And it's like, that doesn't compute, because they're all making more money. Why should I have to lower my prices?
Yeah, and their excuse, I actually heard this yesterday. The excuse was like, well, we don't need it for that long. We only need it for 3 weeks because it's going to sell so quickly. So just do it for a discount. Just do it for like 3-week price instead of your typical 2-month price. And I'm like, that's not how it works.
Right.
That's not how the process works. It's not a lending library of furniture. That's not what we do. There's definitely a science and a sport to what we do and putting it together, and there's a minimum cost involved. There are minimums as far as pushback costs for me to even get involved with the company before I get a truck involved or something else as well too. And those minimum costs have to be met. Other than that, if they're not going to be met, then this is not going to be a good fitting for the company. Right. You have to move on because it's not realistic. But everyone has a price.
Right.
And everyone can do certain things for certain kind of people. And I find that typically the ones who ask and who are the ones who want to work alongside with you are the ones who do get, what they want out of the whole situation. And it still is very much a compromise and a give and take. And it still very much is a people person business. You have to make people happy with the product that you're providing. At the same time, it needs to be realistic and something that's going to be competitive. Right. So I know you posted earlier about the person that wasn't there telling you they didn't want to have all these colors in there or whatever. When statistically you're like, hold on, this is a tried, tested, and true thing. It's going to actually propel and make yours look a little different. I walked 5 different staging properties of competition from 5 different other staging competitive models. They all look the same. I know what makes my company a lot different than the rest of the companies that are out there, because I offer something a little bit different than everybody else does. Everybody has the same thing that's out there, the same furniture, the same artwork, the same beads on the cocktail table, the same, it's
and your aesthetic is definitely unique. I mean, it's, when you see your staging, Kevin did the staging, and
yeah, people know when I showed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, people know when I showed up to the ball game.
Right, and I feel like we shouldn't have to lower when everybody else is making more money. We want to be reasonable, but I had a client that we staged it. They went under contract super quickly, and it's a higher price point. So the last few properties, it's an investor flipper, and the last few, they've sold, but they've taken like 2-3 weeks to sell, and so they're immediately like, maybe we can get a discount on the next one. I'm thinking like, you still have to close, and I wrote back, I'm like, wow, we must have done a really good job then, and that means, if they sold that quickly, they're probably making more than they expected. And so I'm not going to give a discount on the next one because it's still the same cost, to run that track harder label, get the housing, that doesn't change. And so, I think it's important that we share this information with our clients. So in our survey, we had about 38,500 properties. The people that responded, we break it down 1 to 3 years of staging experience comprised about 31% of the respondents, 3 to 5 years at 25.6, 16 plus years at 18%. So,
yay.
And, it breaks down the entire, demographic as far as who is in business. So that was exciting, and we need to continue to attract new people. And of course, there's staying power in the business when you build it properly. So the volume of properties that are staged, up to 50 properties, it was about 18%, all the way up to 500 plus properties. There's about 6 or 7%. I'm sorry, 4% of the people did about 450 to 500 annually. And so, the majority of the stages in our survey fall into the 0 to 50 annually. And then you can see how it kind of scales down from there. Alrighty. The breakdown. So type of market. So it was no surprise that nearly 80% of the respondents live in markets that are considered hot, and only 2.6 are in a slow market. And then 17.9% said they're in a correcting market. So depending on where you live, you may not be in this screaming hot market. You might still have some things that are slower. So this again is a national breakdown. Your market is screaming hot, then you would be focused on that, sharing that information and how staging helps net even more. And then the average properties being staged here, 20.9% were over $1 million. That's a pretty big increase from the past survey. 21% of the properties, 750 to 900. 27% are 350 to 500 range. That number was 40% for 2020, and then 5.3 of the properties were between 100 and 350. That number for 2020 was 25%. So what we're seeing
now,
is,
do you think that just is that the fact that more luxury homes are being staged and that they're seeing the value of that, or that the price of the properties have gone up? That's what I was confused with.
I think it's the price of the properties that have gone up. With the median price if the U.S. median price is $408,000 is the average price. You think about this, a few years ago, it was in the 200s. So the property values, the price of properties has gone way up in the last year and a half. And we're seeing that because it's unlike in my market in the Denver region, you're hard pressed to find a property that is below 300,000 that's decent, and certainly not 150 to 200. You might find a condo or a townhouse in some remote part of but certainly not in the heart of Denver. You just don't find those properties. And so I think it's the increase in property values. And I also think that the awareness of staging luxury properties, people are more aware of that, but that's an indicator that our market has, around, internationally and nationally, the base price for houses, the average or median has gone way up. And that's not necessarily a good thing, but it is a fact. Types of properties being staged, 100% of our members should stage average properties. 77% say they stage luxury. And so I define what a luxury property is and encourage people that if you don't have your luxury certification, get that so you can work with these luxury properties if you would like to pursue that in your market. All right. This statistic I pulled from an online person that tracks all this, a group that does this. So this is days on market. And it's just interesting to see how the market has changed from 2017 to 2022. The days on market, were much higher than they are now. So you look at July 2021 in this graph, that was the low point. And then it tends to go up a bit at the beginning of the year. And then we're going to see probably a dip again. They measure it twice a year. So they do January, July. But you can see this trend downwards for days on market as the market got hotter and the shortage of housing and the demand increased. So this just supports what we all have been hearing and what we know, And the more you know, and the more you can represent yourself as someone that is knowledgeable about the data, that will in turn be able to help you get clients that are skeptical or need or want that data. What are you basing that on? Well, you have the facts right in front of you to be able to share. Okay, so this was from our survey. 25 days on market was the average price for, average days on market for average priced properties. So your market might be 12, it could be 41, it just depends. But this is what the stagers who turned it in said. For the average price properties, they were seeing about 25 days on market for their region. And so we break down average price properties versus luxuries in the survey. So we didn't lump them all together, but this was just, the number. So if you have 25 days on market average, the scenarios 1 and 2, this is scenario 1 on the left. The house wasn't staged first, went on the market. It sat for an average of 83 days. After staging, it sold in about 7. So Kevin, we lost your video. And then
shit. Sorry.
It's okay. If the house was staged first, went on the market, the average days on market to go under contract were 5. So number 1, stage it before you list it. Anybody who's listening to this, you got to encourage your realtors who are watching this, stage it before you list it. Otherwise, you could cost yourself time on market. And the average days to go under contract after staging were only 7, after sitting an average of 83 days. So that's a great statistic to support staging before. You don't just test the market, stage it first. And depending on, again, on where you are, even if the house will sell, they're going to sell for more when it's staged. And we have that coming up, that data. Okay, so here we have the average time to sell 5 to 11 times faster when you stage versus when you don't stage. The house will sell 5 times faster. So again, these images that you can see, these are available for everybody. You can put them in your proposals. You can put them on your social media. Please share them with everybody. Luxury price properties, the average days on market were 41 from people that reported in our survey. And that's just in general, whether they were staged or not. Luxury properties selling in 41 days. So here's the breakdown. Again, the 2 scenarios: 135 days on market when they were not staged. They get staged, they go under contract within 17 days. And then here, when they're staged first and then are put on the market, average days on market were 17 as well. So again, stage it before you list it. Otherwise, you're costing yourself time, because even if it sells at a great price, even after all that is done or something happens, it's time on market, and time is money. And a property that languishes is more likely to have a price reduction. It delays getting paid as the realtor. Everybody, you're waiting for your money. So, don't cost yourself time. Stage it before you list it. So the for luxury, 2 to 8 times faster on average than not staging at all. So then we have a couple of infographics. This is the Vacant Staging Project Planner that you can download. It kind of shows our process, because people don't know what we don't tell them. And there's 16 steps that we identified in this one that you can look at. And then this is also another process graphic. Because when people say, why do you charge so much? This is why. Because it's not just that you're not just in there staging and voila, it's done. It's all the prep that goes into it and the stuff that happens after we stage as well. So we have to educate our clients, and these process graphics should help you accomplish that. All right, now let's get into pricing. So average investment for staging a property on a 30-day term, you can see the range of anywhere from $1,000 to $6,000 or more. Okay, the properties, major metro areas where the properties have a higher value, the pricing is higher than in more rural areas or smaller towns, or where a staging isn't as established, the pricing could be lower. And this again is for a 30-day term. So the average we came up with is anywhere from, I should say 6,000, 1,000 to 10,000, but the median or the average price is $3,350 for an average price property. So that actually is a big increase from, it's almost $1,000 increase from the last time we did the survey 2 years ago. So I'm pleased to see that, that prices are increasing. Now, in my market, my average is not $3,350. It's actually lower than that. And so, but this gives me, if I'm looking at this as a stager, I'm thinking like, maybe I need to raise my prices to be more on par with what's happening in the market, and not artificially keep them low, thinking like, oh, no one's going to hire me. Or, as stagers, we got to take a look and say, where are we falling? And it all relates back to your profitability, your net profit. So as long as you're netting a profit, the goal is 25, 30% or more on a staging project, your pricing is fine, but why leave money on the table even as a stager? So, you might want to start taking a look at these numbers and sort of test to see if you can start pushing the envelope. For a long time, I couldn't get a 2 in front of that number for staging a vacant 5-room average property, living, dining, family, kitchen nook,
Wow. See,
kitchen counter.
I'm double. I
Mhm.
seriously, we can't, there's not much we can do for 3 out here. There really is not that much.
Yeah, and seeing this, you
But
guys, and
we
I'm
could
not.
have the port out here, but our cost of goods and our cost of labor, our minimum wage, everything else included in our warehouse and everything else, we just would not. There's no way you could be profitable if you weren't higher than $3,000 for a average staging for, especially a 5-bedroom. I mean, it's got to be
And
significantly a
and that's
lot
why,
higher than
right?
that.
And so that's where, because our prices are, because I'll tell you, if I came in at 33.50 for an average staging, I would get beat by someone else. And so that's why we do volume. So my answer to the lower pricing expectations here that we have to work on raising is to do more staging. So that's what we'll do: 350 to 400 properties a year, consultations and vacants and hands-on, combination, versus other stagers who can make charge more and then be able to do less volume because they can crack their nut because their market supports a higher dollar amount. So,
Mm.
so I think this number is really, I was pleased to see this number because it represented an increase over the last time we did our survey. And I think a significant one. It's almost a 50% increase over the last time we did these numbers. So again, in your market, as Kevin's saying, his market in Southern California, he's at minimum double. And I know that certain cities, they can get way more for staging because their costs are more expensive. They've done a great job in educating their clients, but it's also their properties are higher priced. So your pricing really is relative to your market expectations and also the price of the properties that you're staging. So what's the average price property in your area now, Kevin? Is it in the 700s or a million or
800.
yeah? So his median,
800 or higher.
yeah, and so ours in our area is still like 350, 400,000 would be considered the average, and certainly we stage a lot of properties that are higher than that and some that are lower. So those all factor in. So tracking your local numbers again is really important. Okay, let's take a look at luxury. So luxury is anywhere from 2,000 to 10,000 plus. I'll fix that average when this number here should actually be 6,000 on there, 6,000 plus. So I will fix that. But let's take a look at the median, 6,800. So 2,000 to 10,000 plus 6,800 for a luxury property. Now that would work in my market. Other people, they might go, no way, I'd have to be minimum double that amount. And so, again, this is a national number. And this would be for a 30-day term, not a 60, but a 30-day. So take a look at, let's say that if this is 6,800 for a 30-day and you normally do a 60, and let's take half that number and throw that 3,400, let's throw that on top. That would be 3,400 plus the 8 is 10,200 for 60-day term. Okay, so remember, convert the numbers for how you price out your services to see if this is reflected. So for 10,200, is that on par for a luxury property in your market? Is it? So Kevin, is that kind of 10,000
Yeah.
60-day?
Yeah, that's for me. Yeah, for me it is.
Okay. So remember, you guys, that the days on market, some people are doing 45, some 60, some even 90 in some markets. We just took a look at the 30 and had people, when they submitted their numbers, to convert their totals down to a 30-day term, even though they might do a 60 to a 90-day term in their markets. So, and that number again increased as well from the last survey, which is good. Prices should be going up. Occupied staging. So every property deserves to look its best. And so, when we're educating realtors about why they want to have a stager involved in working with every property, especially ones that are occupied, is to take that realtor out of the hot seat to preserve their role in relationship. And staging is a key listing and marketing tool. It adds value to their process. So if you struggle with getting realtors on board with when it was staging and even doing consultations, these are some of the points you want to make with them as far as getting them to bring you in. So an owner occupied hands-on staging. So this is just using the owner's things, not bringing anything else in. The range was $500 to $3,000 for an owner occupied. This would be prefaced usually with a consultation where the seller's told to do some things and you come back in and using what they have, make magic happen. So 1,242 was the average using the owner's things. Okay. And again, that could be high or low depending on your market.
That's
that again is higher. Yeah, that's average. And then this is a mixed media. So this is where you're using the owner's things and then you're bringing some of your stuff in to fill the gaps. Right?
I made it. I love it.
I know you did. I know. I should give credit. So mixed media, and I love that term. So we're using some of our stuff mixing with their things. So the average 1,000, 3,000, same range. And this is for 1845. This would be for an average for mixed media staging on a property. So again, if it's a much larger property, it's probably like average type size property. If it's a massive house properties, that price is going to go up. But it all depends on what you're doing. And of course, if you're adding peripheral services like helping them pack, take things to off-site or whatever, that would be additional. But that's a nice number to see for our industry. All right. Consultations, we define what it is. 95% of our respondents said they do consultations. So 5% don't do any at all. And they focus strictly on vacant properties, which I think is interesting. And so that number is there. And that's the average for consultations. So this number did not go up, which I found interesting. So it's $100 to $400 around the country. That number really has not increased in the last 2 years as far as what stagers are charging for their consultations. I know in some markets that number could be, $675 or whatever, but what was reported was this range of $100 to $400 and the average being $250. And so this is for a consultation, probably a walk and talk consultation, maybe doing a report for a small property like ours start at $125. If we have to do a report, we add a minimum $100 more onto it. So I'd like to see this number start to creep up by the next time we do our surveys, because your time is valuable unless people have really figured out how to do them more efficiently. And maybe that's why we're not seeing the number increase, because it's not taking as long to provide these, because there's different maybe templates or systems or methods people are using, not having to take. I used to handwrite them all at the properties. That always took a long time. And I did that for years, would handwrite. And so
I mastered walk and talks and walk and talks with photos and like if there's anything additional that's popping up on the photo, I'll email you.
Yeah.
And we just mastered doing the walk and talk, and not only that, because that's what the clients at the time, the realtors, that's what they were expecting, I guess, from us. And so, they didn't want to have the full on like consultation report. They were like, that's like, there's maybe one realtor that was like, that's like a product that's really valuable. But at the same time, he was like, it's sort of the same thing every time. It's just kind of copied over for a new listing. And I'm like, exactly. So why do we need to do the whole thing if we can abbreviate and still get the same effects,
Yeah, and there's actually I
also have a master consultation person as well. Chris is excellent. I mean, like he does results better than what I can even instruct them to do on my own. So I'm just going to hand them off to him.
Yeah, and I think consultations, we at the very beginning when walk and talks first emerged, I was sort of opposed to them because I thought, what if the seller or the person taking the notes doesn't get it all down? How do you know that they understand everything? And then you're not really getting your foot back in the door to come back. But over time, I've come to embrace them because time is the great equalizer. And I don't want to have to come home and have homework if I can avoid it. And so you give them all the information, they can start working on it right away. There's a general guidelines and tips for consultations, which I can actually include in the stats portal for everybody. But if you send that to a client, because it addresses everything from faith-based items, pets, personal photos, personal care items, just about anything. There's about 12 different things that we, your toilet, your bathroom, no plunger, all these different things that we see in every single house. So I just summarize it all and I give that to every client. And so I think that is a good time saver as well. So
yeah,
I'll include that. All righty. And so next on the survey, so here, these are infographics you can download and use. It's the process. So again, people don't know how we price them, what the stagers paid for. Because you think like, oh, you're just going and telling them to close their toilet, make their beds. No, it's the ability to relate to the seller, to understand we represent you, meaning the realtor, and as your stager, expertise in what is needed to prepare a house for sale, the ability to share recommendations in a way the seller needs to receive them. So we're constantly adjusting how we deliver our messaging based on the seller's temperament, removing you from the hot seat, the realtor, and then helping implement the plan. So within seconds, we have to size up the client and kind of adjust who we are. Then we have to, like this first time we're seeing the house, and then we're coming up with this plan for them. And some of it's easy, and sometimes you walk into a property and it's not easy, or it's a situation where it's a divorce or distress or these different, financial distress or these scenarios that are causing additional stress to the client that we have to manage. So this is important for you to share with your clients as far as why we charge what we do, and then the process of what we do goes, step by step there. And then these infographics I did update because they had is for this survey as far as the median prices and so forth that are in the survey. So you can download these as well. These are great to send to clients, educate them. And then how much more? So this was where it gets exciting. Okay, so 50% of the staged properties in our survey sold for 6% or more over list, with nearly 9% selling for 15 to 20% over list. Okay, so the range is 1 to 20%, and the profile of home staging that NAR comes out with kind of shows the same range. Of the ones that were, 1 to 3% is about 22.6%. Now, what we're not measuring, and because it wasn't presented that way, and I don't know that people are tracking this, is in that 1 to 3%, were those properties staged first, listed, and then they so when they're staged, they're going to be at the staged list price, not just a list price. So the staged list price, if there's a price range that realtors work with, you have the low and the high, and you don't want to overprice it, you don't want to underprice it. There's this range. And so when it's staged, they can price it at the top of the range versus the bottom. When it's not staged, it's in poor condition, they're just throwing it on the market. They can't start out at the same price as somebody's actually taken the time to prepare their house for sale. So that 1 to 3%, that could be even on top of the staged list price. So it doesn't mean that they're not getting a good price for their house. But I was really excited to see this 50%, 6% or more over list. I think that's significant. And then the impact of the 15 to 20% more, where in the past that's been a much smaller percentage of the pie. And so the key is don't leave money on the table. Stage it before you list it. At any price point, you're going to get more when the property is staged, and that's factual. All right. Okay, so how much more? From 5,000 to over 150,000 more, with stagers reporting increases of 300 to 500,000 more after staging. Nearly 30% of the respondents share their staged properties sold for $100,000 or more over list. And as I just said, these were not listed at a low starting price. They were listed at prices on par with how they looked staged and for the market. And because they looked and felt so great to buyers, they sold for far more than anticipated. So pro stagers are making an impact in the sale and helping sellers and realtors make more money. And even though it is tough for buyers and so forth, the name of the game is people want to net as much as they can out of the sale. And it doesn't make them greedy. It's just a fact, especially when they're buying a property in a similar market or another market where it's the prices have been pushed. So how much more? Okay, so these graphics again are available. So I break down average price of 500,000 and then one at 750. So again, 22.6 sold for 1 to 3%, 29%, 4.6%, almost 40% or 39% sold for 6 to 12% more, and 9.7 sold for 15 to 20% more than list. So these are the numbers. That's how it would break down depending on your market and so forth. But a seller would make anywhere from 5,000 to 100,000 or more in this example. And for the realtors, that's $150 to $3,000 more in commission. Okay, so they might not get excited at 150, but that's based on one property. Let's multiply that over the total number of houses that they sell, okay, annually. If they sell 20 houses per year at 500,000, they're going to make anywhere from $3,000 to $60,000 more in income in commission alone. At the 750 price, we break it down. They'd make anywhere from $4,500 to $90,000 more in commission. And of course, the seller is making these numbers on the right-hand side. That's how much they're making in additional income on the sale. So why aren't all houses staged? When it benefits the seller and it benefits the listing agent, why aren't they all staged? And I don't have an answer printed in here. I think it's a lot has to do with, we don't need to stage, like you said earlier. I've had more realtors tell me this year, I've never had to stage a property before, but I think I should because of the expectations of the buyers. And I encourage you guys all to take a look at the profile of home staging that NAR put out. They have a whole section on the impact of media and shows like what you did, Kevin, the flip or flop shows, and the expectations now of buyers going to properties. They expect it to look like how it's staged on television. And that is increased. It's like over 60% of the buyers expect these properties to look like they do on television, which means they need to be staged. And so I think there's a disconnect with, I don't necessarily think it's the seller poo-pooing the idea of staging. I think a lot of it is the agents that want to get properties on the market and maybe are not educated on the value of staging. And what they're missing is that the buyer coming in is disappointed when they walk into a property that isn't staged because that's not what they expected they would see.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a huge impact. All right. How much more? 1 to 20% more, and then 75% of staged properties sold for 4 to 20% over list. That's a really big statistic for us to share. That's 2/3 of the property sold for 4 to 20% more. And I know in your market, Kevin, you've had properties sell for well, much higher.
Higher because people are definitely using the stage list price. At least in my market, they're like, listen, you could do it as is, and we could do it for 600, or we can get staged by Kevin. We could do it for 700.
Right.
Like you make the decision, whatever, and they actually listed at 700. So that price is a little deceptive because they've already taken that markup,
right?
Based off the services. So how are we to know? So I think that percentage is still. I think it's a lot higher. At least in my region, it's a lot higher because the ones that are staged are selling hands over fist for a lot more money.
Oh yeah, I mean, you're talking you're well over 150,000 for a lot of your properties, and
yeah. What about Kathy Lee Sabelli in like Northern California? 1 million, 1.25.
That's crazy.
That's like I've never heard of that. A staging netted $1.25 million over list price. That is like a whole luxury or 3.
Oh yeah, I mean, so in that property scenario, did she have the number? Like, had it been on the market and didn't sell, or was it staged first and then listed and then it went for that much more? You don't know. I mean, I feel like as an industry, we have to start really asking these questions. And there were a lot of people in our survey that they would say, I don't know. I don't know that number. They didn't have the statistic. And how do you get the data? You can go and Redfin, you can go to, and once the property closes, you have that number. You know what you could see what it's listed for because you want to be tracking that for your stats anyway. And then you can go and see the final sales number once it closes, or you just ask the realtor, what did this sell for? And my realtors will be like, yeah, we definitely got more because of the staging. I'm like, would you please put that as a testimonial on our Google reviews? Because people need to hear that. They will give credit to the stager, but not all companies or real estate agents are doing that. Some of them, if you are working with an agent who's not giving you the recognition for the staging, some of that might be ego driven, that they don't want to acknowledge other players that are in there. Our goal though is to figure out, without the staging, what do you think it would have sold for? And hopefully they could give you a real number that you can measure the benefit. And I'm hoping by the next time we do these numbers that we're able to actually track what some stagers, and I know we've talked about this, Kevin, that you're actually benefiting in the overage. If a property sells for $500,000, $300,000, $1 million over because of the staging, because of the overall presentation, which staging is a huge part of, it impacts the photos, it impacts the virtual tours, it impacts the in-person showings, right? It grabs the buyer's emotions. So we make a big impact that stagers can benefit on the back end in that overage. And there's different ways to structure that. And what I mean by that is maybe there's maybe a lesser of a fee charged up front, but then on the back end, it's like, I'm going to get a bonus, a percentage of something. There's some way you're structuring that you're getting even more money because of the impact that you made. And I certainly think
That's what I did.
yes.
I took I took 1/4. I took 3/4 up front, and I did remain the last quarter remaining with a 3% above asking price balance. And so that should translate to being about maybe, because my average is 83,900. So that's like what, like another $2,500 bonus on top of the quarter that I'm receiving, which is another 2,500. So I'm getting another 5,000 in by doing it this way.
Yeah, and I think, and I think because you're taking a bit of a risk up front, but then you're gambling on the fact.
Oh, I know this house is going to sell for over, though. I mean,
yeah.
like as soon as I walked in, I knew what he was doing. I'm like, this house is going to be. This is like all I had to get was one signature.
Right.
Get one person to do it is all I needed to do.
Right. Right. And I think when the properties are selling for like 300,000 more, that's if you do 3%, that's $9,000 more as a bonus. 500,000 is 15,000, and you think like, well, that's a lot of money. Well, the realtor is getting paid their commissions or whatever they've negotiated on the total sale, not just the overage, but the total sale. And of course, the seller, if they're making $500,000 more, 300,000 more, they're ecstatic. So them parting with, 15,000 shouldn't be a big deal to them because you've helped them get even more money. And so it's a win, 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 because even the buyer's agent gets paid on the final sales price. So they win as well when the house goes for more. And so,
but people just get greedy, though. That's the whole thing. Is people get like, no, I'm being nickel and dime for here and there, and that's what I heard before. And I was like, well, but I had to remind them, like, you have two options. You can pay the full price, or we can go option B.
Right.
I'm giving you the options. You tell me how you want to make this whole thing work out, and I will work appropriately. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, so I left the ball all in his court, and he went for it.
Right, and I think that's very smart too, because they're having to put less out up front to risk their money, and they know that they're going to, get basically the closing, the dust settles, and but they're not having to come out of pocket with that money. And especially if it's a remodeling investor, they've done a lot of rehab on it. Their budgets are tight up front, and so you partnering then in the success of the property is basically what you're doing. You're partnering in the success and the final outcome of that property, and you're taking a risk, of course, not as big as theirs. That's why you're asking a very small percentage of the overage, not, and we're not being greedy asking for that. But I think that that's a number that we should start being able to see that's trackable, and that it becomes more of a standard in the industry for those areas that are going for that much more. So my market, we're not seeing those huge increases yet. But if you definitely are in a region where you were seeing these huge,
I don't know, Jenny. Everyone I know is moving to Colorado. At least they're moving to Colorado Springs. I've got 4 of them that are moving to Colorado Springs, and they all know each other. It's crazy, and that's what I'm dealing with right now. I've got 4 separate clients that all have gotten to know each other because they're all moving to Colorado Springs from Gardena, Hawaiian Gardens, Long Beach. One of them in South Pasadena, and I got them all like in contact with each other. I'm like, you guys are all moving around to the same area with your families. I'm like, I'm not sure what's going on in Colorado Springs, but you may want to help me out and give me the clue. I think something I'm missing out on.
Well, I think the attraction of Colorado Springs is it's not Denver prices. And it's one of the fastest growing cities in the area. And don't forget, referrals. You can give those to agents that are here. My husband and son, of course, would love to work with any buyers that are coming and be able to, and they work that region. So they go all over. But I think that's interesting.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. They, buyers and people are moving state to state. There is a big influx coming from people from Colorado, tend to go like to Texas, to Florida, other places, or they go back to where they came from. Very few going from here to the West Coast, though, which is interesting because cost of living is so much more in California. So actually, so I just want to just quickly touch on this. This kind of shows people the additional services that we can offer as a stager. So depending on who you are, you might have some of these services you offer. Make sure that you are educating your clients that you can add to your to your income based on the same client versus having to go find more. Let them know that you do stuff on the buying end, like you can help them design or decorate their property, or you specialize, you have niche specialties that you work with and so forth. So that's a good educational tool. This is just a page on iHosp and the Pro Stager. Again, we're the only association that requires education first. And so we definitely toot that horn. Additional education that people can take in order to increase their knowledge and be able to raise their value and so forth. So that's in the summary, and then our back page. And so that is the overall summary. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. See, remove. Yes, remove.
And we're going to launch it out for everyone to see.
Yes. And so those are our 22
share. Be like, share.
Be like, sure. Shows us their hair.
Sure.
Get this in the hands. So the report, I will fix that one page on there. Get this into the hands of realtors. Share it with people. You can print off pages. You can send them out. It is copyright iHosp and so forth, but we're giving permission for you to send it out because statistics are only as valuable as people reading them and reviewing them. And so it's not a secret. We don't want this report to be a secret. Send it out to realtor boards, any connections you have that are, leaders in your area in that realm, builders, investors, sellers, all those people need to see this information. So share, post away. The PDF download will be available. It's on the home staging stats. Let me fix that one page before you guys shoot it out, although it's not a big deal if it goes with the 10,000 versus 6,000 plus. But I do want to make sure it's accurate before it goes out there. And if you have any suggestions for upcoming surveys that we might do, please email me. You can let me know your thoughts on information that you think should be included, or next time we ask these questions to track this information, because we're always looking for you staying on top of the trends and what people need to support their businesses. So Kevin, I love you, you know that, and I miss you. You need to come.
I will see you in New Orleans.
Yeah, yes, of course, Nolans. That's gonna be fun.
Nolans.
Before that,
yeah.
That's a year away. That's too long. Actually, it's only 10 months away.
I know. I need to come out I'll come out to Colorado and come see you.
That'd be fun. I would love that. Or maybe I'll come to LA and see you.
Yeah.
And meet Sebastian. So,
yeah.
Thank you everybody for tuning in. This session is recorded as usual. You can find them on our YouTube channel for iHosp or on the homestaging show.com. Let's see, homestaging talk show. What is my website? Homestagingtalk.com, I think, is the domain. I have 4 of them for the show, but they're always published online, archived, so they go way back. And so this will be no difference. You'll be able to find it in lots of places. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. Love you, Kevin.
Bye. Love you. Bye.